What if I told you the most wholesome Western on television was controlled by an alcoholic who died suddenly and production just replaced him like he never existed? What if Ward Bond, the beloved wagon master, dropped dead on set and the show continued the next day without acknowledging his death? What if Robert Horton quit at the peak of success and spent 40 years regretting throwing away millions? What if the Wagon Train never actually went anywhere and every episode was filmed on the same ranch using the same rocks? What if John Wayne created the show but took no credit and made no money from it? What if guest stars were paid more than the regular cast because producers thought audiences did not care about continuing characters? What if I told you the show that ran 8 seasons was basically the same episode repeated 284 times? For nearly a decade, Wagon Train sold America a fantasy about pioneers heading west. These are 20 facts that prove the journey to nowhere was built on death exploitation and one man replacing another until nobody cared anymore. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Fact 1. Ward Bond died suddenly and was replaced immediately. Ward Bond played Wagon Master Major Seth Adams for the first 4 seasons. Bond was the heart of the show. He was beloved by audiences and respected by the cast. In November 1960, Bond was staying in a Dallas hotel. The cast was there filming location scenes. Bond went to his room after dinner. The next morning, he did not show up for filming. A crew member went to check on him. Ward Bond was dead. He had suffered a massive heart attack during the night. He was 57 years old. The cast and crew were devastated. Production shut down for the funeral. Then something shocking happened. NBC told producers to replace Bond immediately. The network said the show must continue. Producers cast John McIntyre as the new wagon master, Christopher Hale. McIntyre arrived on set 2 weeks after Bond died. The show resumed filming. Ward Bond was erased from the show. His character was never mentioned again. No explanation was given for why a new wagon master appeared. The show pretended Bond never existed. This was brutal but practical. Fact 2. Robert Horton quit and regretted it forever. Robert Horton played Scout Flint McCullough for 5 seasons. Horton was the show's breakout star. He was young and handsome and charismatic. Women loved him. Horton received more fan mail than Ward Bond. But Horton hated being on a television western. He was a trained stage actor who wanted to do musicals. Horton thought television was beneath him. He felt trapped by Wagon Train. In 1962, Horton demanded to be released from his contract. He wanted to pursue a Broadway career. Producers tried to convince him to stay. Horton refused. He walked away from guaranteed employment and massive popularity. Horton's Broadway career never materialized. He did a few stage shows that flopped. He could not get film roles. Casting directors only saw him as Flint McCullough. Horton spent the 1960s and 1970s doing guest spots on television. He made a fraction of what he would have earned staying on Wagon Train. By the 1980s, Horton was bitter and broke. He gave interviews admitting he made a terrible mistake. Horton said leaving Wagon Train destroyed his career. Fact 3. John McIntyre was nobody's first choice. When Ward Bond died, producers needed a replacement fast. They wanted a big-name star. NBC suggested John Wayne, who had created the show concept. Wayne refused. He only wanted to produce, not act. Producers approached Gary Cooper. Cooper was too sick. They tried Henry Fonda. Fonda said no. They went through a list of famous Western actors. Everyone turned them down. Replacing Ward Bond seemed impossible. Finally, someone suggested John McIntyre. McIntyre was a character actor who had done supporting roles for decades. He was not a star, but he was available and affordable. NBC reluctantly approved. McIntyre joined the show with no expectations. He thought he would last 1 season. Instead, he stayed for 4 years until the show ended. McIntyre brought a different energy than Bond. He was gentler and less authoritative. Some fans hated him for not being Ward Bond. Others appreciated the change. McIntyre never tried to replace Bond. He created his own character. This approach worked. The show survived the transition. John McIntyre was not the first choice or even the 10th choice. Fact 4. The show was based on a John Wayne film. Wagon Train was inspired by the 1950 John Ford film Wagon Master. The film starred Ward Bond and was produced by John Wayne's production company. Wayne saw television potential in the concept. He pitched a Wagon Train series to NBC. The network bought it. Wayne produced the pilot episode. He cast Ward Bond in the lead because Bond had been in the original film. Wayne planned to produce the series and let others run it. But creative differences emerged. Wayne wanted more control than NBC would allow. He walked away from the project. Wayne sold his interest in Wagon Train for a small fee. The show became a massive hit. Fact 5. Every episode was filmed on the same ranch. Wagon Train was supposed to show pioneers traveling west across America. The journey went from Missouri to California, but the wagon train never went anywhere. Every episode was filmed at the same location. The show used Iverson Ranch and other properties near Los Angeles. The same rocks and hills appeared in every episode. Careful viewers recognized the locations. The wagon train would leave one territory and arrive in another, but the landscape looked identical. The illusion of travel was created through dialogue, not visuals. Characters would say they were in Nebraska or Wyoming. Fact 6. Guest stars were paid more than regular cast. Wagon Train featured famous guest stars in every episode. The format focused on different travelers each week. Guest stars played pioneers with problems the wagon train helped solve. These guest actors were paid more than the regular cast. Someone appearing in one episode made more money than actors who appeared every week. This created resentment. Regular cast members knew they were being underpaid, but the format gave them no leverage. The show was about the guests, not the regulars. NBC believed audiences tuned in for guest stars, not continuing characters. So guest actors got the money. Fact 7. The show recycled the same plot. Every week, Wagon Train episodes followed an identical formula. The wagon train encountered travelers with problems. The travelers joined the wagon train. Their problems created conflict. The wagon master or scout solved the problems. The travelers left or stayed. The formula never changed. For 8 seasons, audiences watched the same story with different actors. Critics complained that the show was repetitive. Audiences did not care. They liked the formula. The predictability was comforting. Wagon Train was not trying to innovate. It was trying to deliver consistent entertainment. The show succeeded by never changing. This approach worked for years. Fact 8. Ward Bond was an alcoholic who drank on set. Ward Bond had a serious drinking problem. He drank heavily throughout his career. On Wagon Train, Bond would drink between takes. He kept alcohol in his trailer. Bond's drinking was an open secret. Cast members knew. Producers knew. NBC knew. Bond was functional. He could perform drunk. His alcoholism did not stop production, so everyone ignored it. Bond's drinking contributed to his early death. The heart attack that killed him was partly caused by decades of alcohol abuse. Bond was 57 when he died. His body was destroyed by drinking. The beloved wagon master was an alcoholic who worked drunk. Audiences never knew. Bond hid his problem well enough to maintain his career, but the drinking killed him. Ward. Bond sacrificed his life for a television show. The alcohol helped him cope with work he did not particularly enjoy. The coping mechanism became the thing that destroyed him. Fact 9. Terry Wilson played the same character for 8 years. Terry Wilson played Bill Hawks, a scout on the wagon train. Hawks appeared in nearly every episode for 8 seasons, but Hawks had minimal dialogue. He was background. Wilson would appear in scenes and say nothing. Occasionally, he got a line or two. But Hawks was never the focus. Terry Wilson spent 8 years playing a character who barely existed. He was paid as a regular cast member, but he was treated like an extra. Wilson never complained publicly. He needed the work. Being on a successful show for 8 years provided stability. But Wilson's career never advanced. After Wagon Train ended, he could not get other roles. He was typecast as a silent sidekick. Terry Wilson gave 8 years to a character nobody remembered. He was paid for his time, but wasted his career. Fact 10. The show addressed social issues through allegory. Wagon Train used Western stories to address contemporary issues. Episodes dealt with racism and prejudice. The Wagon Train encountered different ethnic groups. Some episodes showed conflicts between white pioneers and Native Americans. Others addressed religious prejudice. The show used historical settings to discuss modern problems. This was common in 1950s and 1960s television. Networks would not allow direct discussion of controversial topics, but allegorical westerns could address issues indirectly. Wagon Train episodes about accepting outsiders were really about civil rights. Stories about religious freedom were about Cold War paranoia. the show smuggled progressive messages into conservative formats. Some viewers understood the subtext. Others just saw a Western. Wagon Train was more sophisticated than it appeared. The show used the past to comment on the present. This approach allowed it to address topics other shows avoided. Fact 11. Robert Fuller replaced Robert Horton, and nobody cared. When Robert Horton quit in 1962, producers replaced him with Robert Fuller. Fuller played Scout Cooper Smith. The replacement was seamless. Audiences barely noticed Horton was gone. Fuller brought similar energy and looks. The show did not suffer from the change. This proved Horton was replaceable. The character mattered more than the actor. Fuller stayed with the show for 3 seasons until it ended. He became more associated with Wagon Train than Horton. Fuller appeared in more episodes and was better remembered. Robert Horton left thinking he was irreplaceable. He was replaced immediately and nobody cared. The show proved that individual actors do not matter. The concept matters. Wagon Train survived cast changes because the formula was strong. Horton learned this lesson too late. Fact 12. The show featured future stars in early roles. Wagon Train was a proving ground for young actors. Many future stars appeared as guest characters early in their careers. Bette Davis appeared. So did Ronald Reagan. Charles Bronson did episodes. Leonard Nimoy appeared before Star Trek. Mickey Rooney guest starred. The list of future famous actors who appeared on Wagon Train is enormous. For many actors, a Wagon Train appearance was their first significant television role. Casting directors watched the show looking for talent. A good performance could launch a career. The show gave opportunities to unknown actors who became legends. Wagon Train's legacy includes the careers it helped create. The guest star format allowed experimentation with casting. Producers could take chances on unknowns. Fact 13. The show ran longer than the actual journey took. Wagon Train aired for 8 seasons from 1957 to 1965. The actual Wagon Train journey from Missouri to California took 4 to 6 months in the 1860s. The television show ran for 8 years, depicting one continuous journey. This made no sense logically. The Wagon Train should have arrived in California by season 1. But the show ignored this problem. The journey never ended. The Wagon Train was in perpetual transit. Some episodes showed the train arriving in California. Then the next season would start and they were back in the middle of nowhere heading west again. The show existed in a time loop. The journey reset constantly. Audiences accepted this because caring about continuity would ruin the enjoyment. Wagon Train asked viewers to ignore logic. They did. The show that depicted a finite journey ran longer than that journey could possibly take. Fact 14. NBC canceled the show despite decent ratings. Wagon Train was canceled in 1965. Not because ratings collapsed, but because NBC wanted to change programming. The network was moving away from westerns. The genre was becoming outdated. Younger audiences wanted contemporary shows. Wagon Train represented the past. NBC wanted the future. The show was still profitable when canceled. The cast and crew were shocked. They expected to continue. NBC gave them minimal notice. The final season was shortened. The last episode was not written as a finale. The Wagon Train just stopped. There was no arrival in California. No conclusion to the journey. The show ended mid-story. This was typical for canceled shows in the 1960s. Networks did not care about providing closure. Wagon Train deserved a proper ending after 8 years. It got nothing. The pioneers never reached their destination because NBC stopped caring. Fact 15. The show created the modern television anthology format. Wagon Train established the anthology format within a continuing series. Each episode told a self-contained story about different characters. The Wagon Train was the constant. The travelers changed weekly. This format influenced Star Trek and The Love Boat and many other shows. The structure allowed variety without requiring audiences to follow complex continuity. Viewers could watch any episode and understand the story. This accessibility made the show popular. Casual viewers could drop in and out. The anthology within a series format became standard for television. Wagon Train pioneered this approach. The show's influence extends beyond westerns. Every episodic series with rotating characters owes something to Wagon Train. Fact 16. Ward Bond and John Ford were best friends. Ward Bond and director John Ford were lifelong friends. They made dozens of films together. Ford trusted Bond completely. When Bond got the Wagon Train role, Ford was supportive. Ford directed the pilot episode as a favor to Bond. Ford hated television, but he helped his friend. When Ward Bond died, John Ford was devastated. Ford attended the funeral and gave a eulogy. He said losing Bond was like losing a brother. Ford never directed television again after Bond died. The pilot episode was his only television work. Ford did it only for Ward Bond. The friendship between Bond and Ford was one of Hollywood's great partnerships. Bond's death ended that partnership. John Ford lived another 13 years, but he never recovered from losing his friend. The two men had worked together for over 30 years. Wagon Train was their final collaboration. Fact 17, the show made millions. But regular cast stayed poor. Wagon Train was enormously profitable. NBC and the production company made millions from advertising and syndication, but regular cast members never got rich. They received salaries but no profit participation. When the show went into syndication and made additional millions, the cast got nothing. Only guest stars who owned their own episodes received residuals. Regular cast members watched the show make fortunes without sharing in the wealth. This was standard practice, but it was still exploitation. The people who built Wagon Train's success were cut out of long-term profits. Ward Bond died without getting rich from the show. Robert Fuller and Terry Wilson made decent money, but nothing compared to what the show generated. Wagon Train proved that being essential to success does not guarantee sharing in that success. The cast created value. Executives captured it. Fact 18. The show influenced the Western genre. Forever Wagon Train changed how Western television worked. Before Wagon Train, Westerns focused on single heroes in one location. Wagon Train introduced the traveling ensemble. The show moved each week. Characters came and went. This format was copied by other Westerns. The concept of a traveling hero or group became standard. Wagon Train proved Westerns did not need to be static. The genre could incorporate movement and variety. This influenced Rawhide and The Virginian and countless other shows. Wagon Train expanded what Westerns could be. The show's influence lasted decades. Fact 19. John McIntyre left acting after the show ended. John McIntyre played the Wagon Master for 4 seasons. When Wagon Train ended in 1965, McIntyre was exhausted. He had worked constantly for decades. McIntyre decided to retire from acting. He wanted to spend time with his family. McIntyre mostly succeeded in retiring. He did occasional guest spots when he needed money, but he never took another regular role. McIntyre spent his final 30 years mostly retired. He died in 1991 at age 83. Wagon Train was his last major role. McIntyre stepped away from fame and lived quietly. He was one of the few actors who successfully escaped Hollywood. Most actors who retire get pulled back. McIntyre stayed retired. Wagon Train was his farewell to television. He left on his own terms and never looked back. Fact 20. The show is mostly forgotten today. Wagon Train ran 8 seasons and 284 episodes. It was one of the most popular shows of its era. But today, it is mostly forgotten. Younger generations have never heard of it. The show does not air in syndication regularly. Streaming services mostly ignore it. Wagon Train has faded from cultural memory. The show that defined 1950s and 1960s television is now a footnote. This is the fate of most television. Even massive hits eventually disappear. Wagon Train influenced countless shows, but the show itself is forgotten. Ward Bond and Robert Horton and John McIntyre gave years to something that no longer matters. The pioneers they played are more remembered than the actors who played them. Wagon Train proved that television fame is temporary. A.